Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Fern, and I'm the Programme Manager at the Research Forum. If you watched Series 1, you may remember me from the Future of Art History episode. I'll be replacing Alex tonight, if that's possible, so apologies in advance for not being her. But I'll do my best to hold this together, as well as she normally does. So tonight, our last episode of Series 2 is a poetry special. For the next hour, we will be listening to new works responding to and inspired by pieces in the Courtauld Collection. Layla, our regular co-host, will now explain a bit about what we have in store for you and why we've invited this specific group of spoken word artists to contribute to this evening. Layla, are you there?
I am here. Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah.
Good. So this week we have a slightly different Open Courtauld Hour to round up the series. So in this final session, we're actually handing the microphone over to four familiar faces. So poets, writers, and performers who have previously contributed to live Open Courtauld events. So each of our four amazing poets will react to an artwork, as Fern's already said, from the Courtauld Collection. And actually, poetry about art has always been a core element of our Open Courtauld programme. So we think this allows new perspectives, histories, and windows into artworks and art history. So this evening, we really wanted our audience to join our poets in rethinking and re-engaging with pieces from our collection in a totally different light through poetry.
Great, thanks, Layla. With poets being the main focus of this evening's hour, we thought it was crucial to make time to have a chat with them at the end. So if you have any questions to add to the chat, you can connect with us by tweeting at CourtauldRes with the hashtag Open Courtauld Hour. Alternatively, you can also get us on email at researchforum@courtauld.ac.uk. You might want to ask them about their inspiration, their work, or their lives, or what they think about certain topics raised in their works. So please do reach out, and our invisible support team will do their best to get your questions to us. So let's get going. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our first artist of the evening, Andres Ordorica. Andres, are you there? Please reveal yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you. Love the
Good.
neckerchief. Nice touch.
Thank you.
So Andres joined us for our 2018 Res Fest. He is a queer Latinx writer and educator based in Edinburgh. He creates worlds with characters who are from neither here nor there. His fiction has been featured in Confluence Medway, the Centos Review, Gutter, and 404 Inc. magazine. His work has been anthologized in Ceremony, published by Talipasari Press, We Are Always Here, published by 404 Inc., and The Colour of Madness, published by Sterling Publishing. His non-fiction has appeared in The Skinny, Bella Canadonia, Somewhere for Us, Medium, and The Irish Independent. Andres is now working on a novel that explores sexuality, class, and desire across two generations of an immigrant Mexican family set in both Mexico in the 1980s and a more contemporary United States. His novel seeks to uncover the dreams of ancestors and what they leave behind for the next generation to continue on with. Now, Andres is going to be responding to William Hamo Thornycroft's drawing for the Institute of Chartered Accountants Frieze. So, Andres, how are you tonight? It's good to see you.
I'm doing well. I'm really excited. I'm very happy to be back with the Courtauld in this strange but new way of doing things. I would much rather be in your hallowed halls, especially because you guys do really good after parties for your events.
Oh goodness, yeah, we are famed for them. Sadly, none of that tonight. Just a glass of water. I think I just advertised the Scotland rugby team there for a moment, but that's always good. Can you tell us a bit about why you chose the work that you're responding to this evening?
Yeah, it was very interesting because I did a similar thing in 2018 in that I chose an artwork that I think um, art aficionados and art historians would not assume to be the first go-to for a writer doing a response piece. So in 2018, I did a statue by Paul Gauguin, and I remember reading about that statue of his wife and learning that it was meant to just be a practice piece. It was never meant to be sort of an artwork shown in a gallery. And so when I was looking through the archives online, I was really interested in specifically looking at the sketches of different artists that you have, and this idea that often a sketch is sort of an early version of a poem or an early draft of a novel for a writer, and it's stuff that you really wouldn't want someone to see. And so I really like that idea that it's not the finished piece. And then doing some history on, or research on Thornycroft, I realized that he was like a famous sculptor. Didn't know that he was a member of the Royal Academy, and he ended up getting a knighthood. And I just found it really interesting, the parallels then, because I was just drawn to it. And then realizing, oh wow, Andres, you've done the same thing. You've kind of happened upon this practice piece by an artist, but there was something really captivating about it that I will explore in my poem.
Oh, wow. Well, I love that angle you're taking with it, and I can't wait to hear more. So when you're ready in your own time, go for it.
Thank you. This is called A Poem Born from Dust. You are a builder. I am too. Did you know that he who writes is one as well? He builds worlds with words, you with blood, sweat, graft. I with ashen observation. You have no name, or so he will learn, due to forgetful negligence. I do apologize. It was artistic principle to only leave my name behind. But you have this drawing, or at least those who guard it within their archives do. Over many sooty days, I worked to capture your frame, immortalized you in paper. On London streets, I observed a man turned him, turned you into statue. Made your hand a question, frozen in time, distorted in front of your face. Made your body hold breath, suspended in murky water, lungs waiting for release. Turned your head into a phrase in the middle of a sentence, cut off by a louder thought. What was it you wanted to say? What was it you were thinking? What was it hanging off your tongue? Had I been braver, had I gone over, I might have answers. But the sketcher simply sketches, always watches from a distance, rarely confronts the subject. You may wonder why, of all the people in London, did I choose you to draw. The truth, I liked your rolled up sleeves, homed in on their form and texture. In the same way that the writer can play with form and texture, can lift a line with imagery. So he will notice this detail, your work shirt, rolled sleeves. It will draw him to you. He will study this sketch in similar ways to how I studied you on sooty days. He will play detective and try to unearth secrets contained within your shading. But there is so much that only subject and artist will know about those days. He cannot know you wiped your forehead slowly with a brown paisley cloth. He will never know the color of your shirt or the color of your kind eyes. He can never know how in times of boredom I would make up games in my head, imagining you in things you'd never wear, clown shoes, velvet stockings, a vermilion kimono draped around your strong shoulders, or as a body stands close. He will never know how I thought of you between day and night, when hours would stretch across those small moments of observation, how I longed to speak to you, but was so full of frights, so I hid behind my tall easel. It was easier that way, and still I was with you in some fashion as I sketched. Sometimes other men joined, like the one who read papers standing in the mid-morning sun, a fag in his mouth, light bouncing off the sheet. One puff, two puff. I kept him there, let him stand in for me to be close to you, gave me proximity, simulacra as they say, or so the writer will believe. He will take time to imagine what is not actually there to fill his meter up. It's the job of a poet to build up a world from the lines the artist makes. That is the fate of the sitter. The man observed on quiet days, the man sketched from a distance, but still I promise to remember you as a question mark, drawn breath, a phrase cut off loudly. To remember you are dust, and unto dust you shall return, thumb between my fingers, sprinkled onto paper, rubbed purposefully into place. It will bring out your eyes and face. With charcoal I'll make you, turn you into a work of art so that you can live on forever. I'll etch you into memory, make you immortal, make you mean something. When this poem is read aloud, your body will be restored, awakened in their minds. Someone long from now will find meaning, will make something of us. From charcoal, from ash, a poem will be born of dust. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I love that it was such a different perspective on the artwork as well. And I'm sure lots of people will have questions. And if they just remember to tweet us at Courtauld Res with the hashtag Open Courtauld Hour, we'll get them to you in a bit. So
Okay.
thank you again.
Yeah.
It is now my pleasure to introduce to you all our second act of this evening, Kat Hepburn. So Kat joined us at V&A Dundee for ResFest Dundee last year. She's an award-winning scriptwriter, spoken word artist, and educator based in Glasgow. Her main passions are writing, performing, exploring feminist issues, and using contemporary storytelling to empower, provoke, and make people laugh. Her work has featured on STV, BBC Six Music Festival, BBC The Social, and the Edinburgh Fringe. She's also the co-founder of Sonnet Youth, a spoken word theatre organisation that curates live events all over the country. And her debut book, Girlhood, is on sale now. And she also performed a sellout run of this show at the Edinburgh Fringe. So, hi, Kat, I can see you're there. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for asking me back.
No, thank you for being here. Could you say a little bit about the work you've chosen tonight and why you were drawn to this one particularly?
Sure. So I chose Oscar Kokoschka's The Dreaming Youths. And yeah, I chose it for two reasons. The first was that I just thought it was beautiful and my eyes were immediately drawn to it. But the second reason I chose it was because when I was looking into what the piece meant and looking at themes of adolescence and teenagehood and coming of age, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of it's connected to a lot of the work that I already do. So that kind of excited me. And I also like how the subject is in the middle and there's other stuff going on around her, but I was just really interested in what was happening with her. And usually I write things that are from the character's perspective. But for this one, I decided to be a narrator, but coming in more from the teenage boy's view, because I feel like we're very much looking at her. She's the subject. So yeah, it was through a kind of teenage boy's lens and being a teenage boy being in love with something they don't really quite understand. So that's what I've attempted to do in under 5 minutes.
That's amazing. That's super interesting, especially because in that artwork you can see that she's in solitude and she's almost on a pedestal surrounded and with the castle in the distance. So that's really amazing. So thank you again for being here, and I'll pass over to you to get started.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is called Crush. She has a cheeky smile. Her hair's almost down to her bum, blonde and straightened with her mum's iron. The smell of impulse, why not, and burning hair on brown paper follows her wherever she goes. An only child, she's allowed to go pretty wild. She smokes B&H cigarettes out her window and stays up late. And when her mum and stepdad go away, she throws the sickest parties. She has 2 pet mice, Brittany and Christina. Her belly buttons pierced twice. Every girl wants to be her. His family's sadly motherless, rudderless. Their house was built with bricks of testosterone and denial. His brothers spend most of their time pumping iron or talking about pumping birds. They are pure tough guys, a wee bit rough guys, number 1 buzz cut, knuckles cut up from scrapping at the weekend guys. And he's not like them. He doesn't get satisfaction from headbutting a random to shut them up, and he thinks girls are pretty special, not skanky little sluts. She paints on her confidence with lip gloss ease. The V of her thong sprouts from the back of her tight black school trousers like lilac spring flowers. Most of all, she's not daft. She answers questions in class with intelligence and sass. The very knowledge of her presence makes his blood go faster to places he really wish it wouldn't. Sharing a classroom with her is pain and pleasure in equal measures. He does not talk about his feelings. He's learnt from the best to internalize. He has anxiety, but there's not a word for it yet. That will come way later in his 30s when he goes to therapy every second Tuesday, like the rest of his arty middle-class pals. She asks him out, and he's pretty shocked. He can't believe his luck. The prettiest girl in school wants to hook up, and in a few weeks they're having sex. High on young lust and exploration every chance they get, in her bottom bunk bed, in his car, just like Rose and Jack. He doesn't wear a Johnny because his brother John says it's like showering my raincoat on. Then, 6 months on, and deeply in love, 2 little blue lines come along and spoil all the fun. She's 15 and has dreams of going travelling and then to uni, so there's no question. The word abortion is on the tip of both of their tongues, and she is so brave. After the procedure, he can't find his words. His feelings have ran away from home. All he needs to do is tell her it's going to be okay, but he remains quiet, not quite knowing what to say. And she's sensible enough to know that it's the right thing. The real sting comes from his silence. His big-mouthed wee brother finds out, which means so does everyone at school. So she takes a few weeks off to avoid the rumour mill. And they don't speak again. He goes to art school and she becomes a nurse. He sees what she's up to from the odd social media post. He muted her years ago, but he still clicks on them from time to time. Her long hair is now a bob, but she still has that cheeky smile. One day he sees a photo on her Instagram. She's beaming, holding a picture of her 12-week scan, side by side with a soon-to-be dad, a tall, broad-shouldered, kind-faced man. It makes him realise that he didn't treat her in the way that she deserved. They were trying on adulthood like baggy suits that didn't suit them. They were adolescents with no direction and too much love to give. He so badly wants to reach out to her, to tell her that now he has grown and he's found his words. And his brothers are a bunch of dafties, and he hopes that she knows that she was his first true love. And he thinks about her lots and hopes that she is happy. His fingers poised to write this all in a DM, but he just likes the photo instead. Thank you.
Wow, Kat, that was really powerful. Elements just took me right back to childhood in semi-rural Scotland. It was so like an accurate portrayal, and the mention of impulse body spray, which I had forgotten existed, just kind of like took me back, and I could almost smell it.
Yeah, so, that and B&H bags.
Yeah, not so much them for me, but, but thank you so much. That was wonderful, and looking forward to talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Dean Atta. Dean has been involved in a number of Open Courtauld events, leading the poetry section of ResFest 19 and 18. Dean was named one of the most influential LGBTQI+ people in the UK by The Independent on Sunday. His debut poetry collection was shortlisted for the Polari First Book Prize. His debut novel, The Black Flamingo, was awarded the 2020 Stonewall Book Award, and shortlisted for the Silip Carnegie Medal, Youth Book Prize, and the Yallock Prize. His writing dealing with themes of race, gender, and sexuality have appeared on the BBC and Channel 4, and in his regular column for Attitude magazine. And the work that Dean is going to be responding to tonight is John Gibson's Langside Public Hall, National Bank in Glasgow. So Dean, if you're there, can you, oh, you popped
I'm here.
I see you. Sometimes Zoom is really confusing and you can't always see people, but there you are. I see you now. Hello.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be back working with you again. I'm loving the hosting. Like, you two are doing a great job. And I've loved the poem so far, and it's really wonderful. Have we acknowledged that everyone on this show today is in Scotland?
No, we have not. But we may be acknowledging that in the chat that's to follow, and talking a wee bit about why that is the case.
Well, for me, I'm new to Scotland, so like when you asked me to do this, I searched the collection for something that would provide a link to Scotland because I really wanted to write about the move. And then the fact that this actual piece in the photograph by John Gibson was moved, the location of this building was moved from the city centre to the south side of Glasgow, was just perfect to kind of write about my move from London up to Glasgow. So yeah, I really was kind of taken by that story. And you know, I've been on lots of Zooms and various writing groups that I'm involved with, and someone gave me more information about this building, kind of local anecdotes, and so it just really made sense. And I live right by it, and I run past it when we go for our jogs and our cycles. So this building, yeah, it just had to be written about. So it was perfect that it was in the collection.
Oh wow, that's excellent. I'm excited already. So without further ado, if you're ready to go, just take it away.
Brilliant. So this response is called Books, Bricks and Houseplants. 1. Bricks. Autocorrect keeps telling me it's languid or languished. I've not thought about it much since moving here. We've walked, run, cycled and driven past it so many times. Twice in the same day, I'm confronted by it on my screen. A poetry commission asks that I respond to the online archive of the Courtauld Institute of Art. I type Glasgow into the search box and there it is. Langside Public Hall, formerly National Bank, Queen Street, Glasgow. It was dismantled and moved brick by brick, 1902 to 1903, from the city centre to its shorelands home, south of the River Clyde. Ian tells us on Zoom that evening in our workshop on storytelling, how the bank thought it too extravagant, not giving an impression of fiscal responsibility, how it was sold to Glasgow City Council, a community asset. Stella says she used to take ballet classes there every Saturday for 4 years. I see it can be privately hired, for our wedding perhaps. A capacity of 150, banquet style. When will 150 people be able to gather? 2. Books. How long will we be socially distancing? I think of my family in London, Cyprus, and Switzerland, how on the 8th of August 2019, we were crammed in to gaze the word for my book launch and farewell party, how you and I left for our new home the next day, how we found Category Is books and a new community waiting, how we're building a life together, brick by brick, south of the River Clyde, but far north from our previous London homes. Your job means you're here for 4 years, but I feel like I could leave at any time. How I only brought the essential items like clothes and important documents, and only a small selection of my books. The rest are with my mother in London, who is working her way through them alone during lockdown. Here in Glasgow, this shelf space is a lack of commitment. 3. Houseplants. You keep bringing plants home. At first, I say it's your responsibility to water them, but I cannot help but notice when their soil is drying. When we're both home, glasses of water and mugs of tea are the way we check in, and show each other how much we care. Milliliter by milliliter, we flood each other with love. Our 2 mugs are a gift from Sonia. They say yours and mine. But we haven't decided which is yours and which is mine. Is everything ours? You put more plants on the empty bookshelves and they look so at home. You're painting the walls in our bedroom this week. Liters of Cape Verde on once white walls. You want it cozy and den-like. I think of a den like going to bed with no expectation of sleep, dreaming with eyes wide open. A den is an endeavor made of borrowed materials, temporary and precarious, but so much more than the sum of its parts. Our life together feels den-like. Last night, we slept on the futon in our guest room. We play at being visitors to our own life. Today, you decorate and I write. I pause to consider it. Home. All these rooms are our own. Can you believe it? Can I? As I write this last line, I can smell Cape Verde paint drying. Thank you.
Oh, Dean, that's so beautiful, and especially pertinent when we're all stuck wherever we chose to lockdown. I've not seen my family in Scotland for this whole time, and I think, yeah, as well, I studied at Glasgow, so I have a personal connection to it, and I think you really brought it to light, and especially how it feels to not be able to visit anyone or do anything. So thank you so much, and I'm sure people will have questions at the panel at the end as well. So now we are moving on to our last performance of the evening. I am delighted to introduce Nadine Jassat, who, like Kat, joined us at ResFest Dundee at the V&A last year. Nadine is a poet, writer and creative practitioner known for combining the creative arts with social justice. In 2017, she was named as one of 30 Inspiring Women Under 30 by YWCA Scotland, and in 2018 she was awarded a prestigious New Writers Award from the Scottish Book Trust and shortlisted for the UK's largest poetry prize, the Edwin Morgan Poetry Award. In 2019, she was included in Jackie Kay's International Literature Showcase selection and released her debut poetry collection, Let Me Tell You This, to great praise. Nadine, if you wanted to reveal yourself. Oh, you are there.
I'm revealed.
It's so funny that sometimes you just can't see people on Zoom. Anyway, thank you for being here. I know you've had such a busy day.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So you're reacting to Gauguin's Nevermore Today, which is actually probably one of our most famous pieces in the collection. Did you want to contextualize where you were coming from and why you chose this work?
It's so interesting as well to know that it's one of the most famous ones in the collection. For me, a lot of my work is about women's voices, and I guess the idea of speaking and the power of speaking. And I think when I saw the painting, I felt like the woman in it, Pahura, who sort of isn't named without doing research, I felt like I wanted her voice in a way that the painter didn't give it. And a lot of my work engages quite critically with ideas around colonialism, for example, and like the white male gaze. And so to me, it felt like a really interesting opportunity to respond to.
Definitely, yeah, this piece, I also find it quite troubling how popular a lot of these works are without contextualizing who is the muse. So yeah, really excited to hear what you've got to say. So I'll pass over to you to get started.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the piece, the poem, certainly seeks to ask questions. So it's called Questions About Looking, and it's written in 3 parts, 3 different voices. But I would like to start first with a quote from the collection's website. Gauguin wrote to his friend and dealer Daniel de Montfrid that with Nevermore, he intended to use a simple nude to suggest a certain savage luxuriousness of a bygone age. Gauguin viewed the painted surface itself as luxurious. His model was Pahura, his Vahini, brackets, Tahitian wife. The setting, however, is not one of lust, but unease, Are the two figures behind the headboard innocent bystanders, lecherous visitors, or malevolent spirits? Their status is left deliberately unclear. 1. The writer. I have some questions about looking, or more specifically, who looks, or more precisely, who looks back, who looks out, and doesn't. Tell me what you see as we turn our eyes to paint. Do yours go first to her naked body, then slowly travel to her face? I close my eyes and I try to hear her, Pahura on display. And what stays is the image of her dark pupils, pulled so far away they nearly vanish off the frame. I think maybe I'll find her in the hand that holds her face. I think maybe I read a protection or defiance in the way her bicep lies or is laid. I think maybe I'll find her, and perhaps the problem's there. Perhaps my pen still binds her as it touches at her hair. Shut your eyes. Do you see her? The headboard on the bed, Vahini on his tongue, her limbs closed yet still spread across centuries ahead, and her mouth is painted shut. Can any of us see her without her hand behind the canvas, the palette chosen entirely her own? When I close my eyes, I hear no. 2. The guide. Thank you for lending us your eye today. And as you look, we ask that you complete our small survey to best capture the experience as you purvey what's before you, or perhaps better to say, what you find here on display. Ah, Pahura, you're quite right. The model's eyes are turned away. Try imagine them direct, rather shocking, I'd say. The artist wanted to evoke a certain savage luxuriousness of a bygone age, and you know, he captured it quite. Notice also the details nearly out of sight. The title, a clear reference to the painter's peers. Good to salute an icon on the canvas, clear as day to whom he's referring. No? Ah, the figures, yes. I'm so glad you ask, as that brings me back to my initial task, as here, dear viewers, you will find yourselves at last. So if you could please select the one which best applies from the list which I am about to provide, and name yourself as follows. 1. Innocent bystander. 2. Lecherous visitor. 3. Malevolent spirit. It will be our pleasure to note down your reply. After all, I am your humble guide. 3. Pahura speaks. You can try fit yourself on my tongue, girl, and bring with you your turpentine taste, your anger's wish to strip truth from paint. Meanwhile, I'll still be on display. The world turns and my image with it, though my voice is no longer lived enough to say what I would. I can't promise you a truth separate from history, nor a mirage produced from your imagining of me. And yet, don't I deserve more than this in-between? Is this justice? These words you give to me, is justice possible? Or are you just another woman in a long line of women desperate to speak, trying to find something that you can give to me? Some hope or some apology? Some hand reaching out through the past? Meanwhile, around me, the hands that paint me still speak, and I lie on, unspoken, unasked.
Wow, thank you so much, Nadine. That was a very accessible way of drawing attention to issues that need to be spoken about more with the interpretation of artworks in high profile collections. So thank you so much for taking on that topic. So it was amazing hearing you all tonight. It's moments like this where I feel extremely privileged to be in a position whereby I can make these things happen and get to interact with such talented human beings. So please all turn your cameras on now. We now have a few minutes to have a conversation with you all. So often, once the poetry reading is over at events like this, we say goodbye. And we never get a chance to chat to the person behind the words. I think it's so important that we do have an opportunity though, so we as an audience can get insight into what responding to works like this is doing and why it is important. So before opening up the questions, what I really want to ask you all is something I'm always thinking when I organise the poetry element of public events. And it's, what do you as an artist think about arts institutions asking you to interpret works from their collections? Do you 100% enjoy doing this? If so, why? And if not, why also? That's to all of you, but because I know Andres, I'm going to pick on him and ask him to answer first, if that's okay.
I think for me, I enjoy it, and I think it is a really, I work for the Scottish Fame Writers Network, and my role is all about community engagement and really trying to develop communities. And I think especially within Scotland, having such a heritage for writing, I think we're always really conscientious of not just sticking within academia, with academic circles, especially in regard to poetry. And so I think, when it comes to arts engagement, you have to really think of different avenues and different channels of bringing in new audiences. And sometimes that's totally going to a different medium. In the same way, that a poet might ask a painter to look at their collection of poems and interpret it through a visual medium. And I think if that helps people access the work and talk about it, and, in the different ways that we've dealt with that today, I think especially, like with Nadine and Kat, how they both, tackling issues around male artists and how they deal with women and women's voices within the art world. I think sometimes it's really helpful to have someone who's outside of that world come in and confront it in a way that maybe if you were an art historian at a conference, people would throw tomatoes at you or something. But I think it's very important, and I find it very valuable.
Thank you so much. And I can assure you there's never tomato throwing at the Courtauld. We just don't do that kind of thing. Would anyone else like to jump in with a perspective? Dean?
Yeah, I love it because every art institution I've worked with that's offered me a commission, they always are happy for it to be really personal. They don't expect you to be educating people on the history of the piece. They want your kind of human, authentic response to that piece, or where your mind and your imagination takes you when spending time with that piece. So I really appreciate those invitations because it opens me up to new possibilities. And I've worked with lots of arts organizations, and I always find something new and exciting whenever I go back to places. And I just love it. And if the poem has longevity, that's something really special, because sometimes you write for a commission thinking, okay, I'll do it on the night, and if I never do it again, I never do it again. But especially the Courtauld pieces that I've done, they are having a longer life. Like the piece I did for you last year, writing about the Garden of Eden, and that poem I wrote, Two Black Boys in Paradise, it feels even more important now in the time of Black Lives Matter, kind of making a re-emergence and thinking, what is paradise for Black people? What do we need? And so that I've returned to that piece, recently, and I've sent it off to be published somewhere, and they've accepted it. So it's still, that's because of your commission that I wrote it, and now it's going to have another life. So I love responding to art, because you never know what's going to come from it. And in this case, I responded to a photograph, but of a building in a location that it isn't anymore. So that kind of a photograph can capture, you know, a moment in time, and that building is now somewhere completely different. So I love, you know, poems can do that as well. They capture things in a moment, and then even if you change as a poet, even if the situation is completely different, when you return to that poem, you've captured it, and I love that.
Thanks, Dean. That's so beautifully put, and congratulations on the publication of Two Black Boys. That's excellent. Love to hear that. Would anyone else like to offer some input? Kat?
Yeah, just to like add on what Andres and Dean have said about it being, like, for me anyway, it feels like a kind of gift when you are approached by someone that's not in your exact pool of what you're used to, and they ask you to put your own spin on it without being too prescriptive. Because I think sometimes when you're just creating something from nothing, it can be more of a challenge, but when you're given a brief, you can work within this this small thing that you've been given and run with it. So yeah, it's like exciting to be opened up to a different art form and to go outside of your comfort zone, but also it's just really fun and inspirational. And I always feel like my pieces that come from different commissions, that they add something that wouldn't have been there otherwise. It's not came from me, it's come from looking at something else and then responding to that. So it's something quite special, I think.
Oh wow, excellent. Thank you so much. And Nadine, do you have anything to say?
I agree with everyone. But genuinely really love commissions like this where you get asked to respond, you know, in something that's bigger than itself. It's not just the painting, it symbolizes so much, it has such a history, and the responses can go anywhere. And for me, I think with this one in particular, in terms of form, I guess, as a poet, I really enjoyed the opportunity to play with voice that this brought me. And I think that's something that I do already in my work, but that when you're responding to a commission, responding to a piece of art, it gives you that springboard, a bit like Kat said, you know, to take it in different directions and write in voices that I wouldn't normally as well. So yeah, no, I really loved it. And I remember when I first decided I was going to do that one, I was a bit worried. I was like, oh, you know, I'm saying what I'm saying. And I was a bit worried about those tomatoes. And actually, you know, the reception to it, you know, has been great. So yeah.
No, I appreciate what you did with that, because I think Layla will agree with this. The reason that we like to invite poets to interpret the works is they can often say things that art historians have been conditioned not to say. And I think that's a good thing, because it makes people think about what their purpose as interpreters of culture are. Anyway, thank you all for answering my question. Layla, do you want to chip in here?
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on the fact that we accidentally on purpose organised an entire event that was focused on Scotland, even though me and Fern are based in London at the moment. So I personally think that it's important to decentre the image of London as sort of the epicentre of all things art and culture in the UK, when in reality, as everyone here knows, Scotland has a pretty vibrant, rich and diverse cultural landscape. And actually, if you think about Glasgow and Edinburgh as leading voices in the arts, it's amazing. And we wanted to really share that with the audience that we've developed at Open Courtauld Hour, because it reaches such a massive range of people from all over the world. So yeah, that's why we wanted to do that. But I wanted to know if anyone else wanted to comment on that or anything to add about us doing this today. Dean?
Yeah, I think as someone who's recently made a home here in Scotland, it was wonderful. And I guess you can hear some of it in my poem, you know, to find the community and to find the arts world here and the book world here, you know, being part of the Scottish BAME Writers Network that Andres helped to set up, and, you know, meeting fellow BAME writers here, immediately being able to plug into a network of people, going to the amazing category is books, which is a LGBT or a queer bookshop, as they like to be called. And I think not everyone will know about them. You'll know about Gaze the Word in London, but you won't know about category is here in Glasgow. So I think there's so much going on here, the art scene, the literature scene, the music scene, the drag scene. As someone who does drag and loves drag, I've been loving, you know, going to cabarets and drag shows here. And, yeah, there's just so much to offer every single night, you know, when everything was open. And I'm looking forward to, you know, that again in the future. And yeah, I just recommend people come up and visit when they can.
Yeah, it's so true, because I studied theatre and art at Glasgow, and people just didn't know how amazing the drag scene was in Glasgow. And when I moved to London, I was like, oh, does everyone not love drag as much? And does anyone else want to say anything about this? Kat?
Yeah, so just to add, I as you mentioned, Layla, I run a night called Sonnet Youth, and we've been running for just over 4 years, and we're still not running out of people to book. And although we book people from further afield in Scotland, we're still tapping into that Scottish scene. So we have like spoken word artists, comedians, rappers, musicians, poets, all different types of artists and performers, and we're still tapping in. And as time goes on, more and more people are emerging through the scene and finding their voice. And I think I can't compare it to any other art scene, because I've only ever really lived in Scotland and in Glasgow for a kind of long period of time, but I feel like it's a really welcoming scene. So if someone's sort of beginning to test the water or dip their toe in a kind of performing art, then they've got a community of people that can be there to encourage them. And I've seen that over the last 4 years, being a performer and a promoter. So I think that feels very special. It might be the same in London, but to me, London just feels so vast. This is a small bubble, in a good way, of amazing artists and a really supportive network that can enable people to grow as performers. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, no, I always found that when I was in Glasgow, that the community of people that would just, everyone would always come to anything you would put on stage or any exhibition. Everyone would be there, even if they just pop in, and it was really lovely. And I don't know if it's the same here. London's so vast that people can't get across as quickly and stuff. Does anyone else want to say anything?
Andres, how do you feel about the move? You've recently moved, like Dean has.
Yeah, I've been here about 2 years, over 2 years now. But it's then funny because I'm married into a very Scottish, very Aberdonian family. So I feel like, yeah, my ties to Scotland are kind of nearing towards a decade. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've noticed, I don't want to use like the word meteoric because I'm still very early days in my career, and still, you know, finding my footing. But I think in the 2 years of that I've lived in Scotland, I feel my career has progressed more than when I was in London. And you know, I first moved to London, gosh, 11 years ago, and then I went back to grad school there. And that's not to sort of, you know, disparage London. I think though, like, you know, what Kat was saying, I think in a very good way, there's sort of a small bubble and you can network a lot quicker. And I think people are willing to sort of take a chance on you more, or I think because you know, the bubble is smaller, someone will know you through someone. And so if someone vouches for you, I think that can kind of go a long way. And it's just sort of nice how connections and friendships can develop organically. I remember Nadine DM'd me because I had written an article in The Skinny about 90s rom-coms. And it was really funny because, you know, the BAME Writers Network was starting to do workshops here in Scotland at the Poetry Library. And so I knew we were going to meet. And then I knew that Nadine had her poetry collection coming out. And like, you know, everyone was talking about Nadine. And so when Nadine wrote me and she was like, oh, I really like your writing, I was like, oh my God. And then like a really beautiful friendship has been born from that. And I think, you know, when I was living in London, I think I was always really nervous about engaging with people who sort of were further on in their career. Whereas I think in Scotland, I've been really lucky that people who are, you know, years ahead of me have taken me under their wing as a mentor, but then also just as a friend. And I really think I enjoy that more, just the genuine community that I feel here.
I mean, I feel we should say it was a really good article. It was really good. And it was one of those moments where, you know, when you read a piece of writing by somebody else and you're just like, it resonates so much, and you're like, this is the kind of writing I like, and this is the way someone narrates their story. So I found connection with that. But for me, so I've been in Scotland for 10 years, and I feel very proud that it's my chosen home. And some of the words that other panelists have used, like community, really come up really strongly for me, and that I feel like I've been welcomed. And I feel like when you choose a place as your home, that's such a big personal journey, and I think as writers, those huge personal journeys of finding a place and making it your own home on your own is similar to that journey of voice within your poetry, and writing a book on your own, expressing your voice and finding that path. And so I think for me, my relationship with Scotland is connected to my journey as a writer, both in that very gentle personal way, but also in the more professional ways that we talk about, that Andres has mentioned, for example. So I'm very happy to be here. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And just to say, this is not sponsored by the Scottish Tourist Board in any way. We've not been put up to saying this.
Can you tell me in fact we're a little bit homesick? Just thinking of Scotland, getting you all to talk about it since we can't go back just yet.
I've got tatty scones in the kitchen as well.
Oh, don't. Okay. So thank you so much for responding to Layla's nice thoughts. I'm just going to take a question off Twitter now for you guys. So I'm going to have to read it off my phone. And this is from Jess Moody. How did the artist feel engaging with pieces remotely? How might the physical engagement on site have changed your response? And then in brackets, would it? So does anyone want to take that? Dean, right away there.
I guess the reason I chose that picture was because it was a building I'd really seen in real life as well. And it was a place I walked past, run past, cycle past. And also I could speak to people that live here that have memories or a connection to that building. So for me, I knew I couldn't see the photograph, but a photograph is a photograph. And I don't know whether seeing it, framed and hanged would have made much difference to my engagement with it. So I kind of was responding to the building as much as the photo of the building.
Sure. Nadine?
I think to add to that as well, for me with mine, I have no idea of the size. I have no idea of the size of the piece. And when you're looking at it on your screen and you're writing in the way that I was towards it, the way that I'm looking at it is that I'm bigger than it. But then if I'm in a building with it and it's so much bigger than me, if it's the whole size of a wall, I think that would have completely shaped the tone as well, and the sense of being able to respond to it as this thing looking down on me versus being in the position that I was, looking in at it and feeling able to pull it apart and critique it because of the position I was in. So I'd like to see it in person and see how that affects it.
Well, I think at the moment it's actually in storage. To be honest, I don't know. But I think from what I remember, it's quite low down on the wall where it used to be presented. So you're actually kind of have to look down at it, which is also adds a very odd dynamic between the sitter and the viewer, which kind of makes me feel even more uncomfortable in a way, and kind of adds to the sense of the drama in the work. So when it is back up, come see it and see what you think. Andres, Kat?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Nadine said about there's a certain intimacy with, I have no idea how big mine is either, so it was in my hand, that girl was in my hand, and she was at the beginning, she was at the top of the Google document that I was working on when I was creating the poem, so she was very much I don't know, I was connected with her on the same way that I would be connected to a pal whose Instagram photo I was looking at. So I felt like she was mine, she was in my pocket, she was on my phone. And yeah, I think if I maybe saw her in real life, there would be a power, it would be a difference in power, and maybe I'd be like, whoa, she's huge, she's magnificent. But yeah, I think sizing has a lot to do with it, and just the way we've been accessing them is on our phones or our laptops, so that probably would make a difference. I had not thought of that at all until that question was asked. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I really like how you addressed how we respond to images, especially in the time of lockdown. We just kind of constantly, well, I am peering at my phone on Instagram, and then images, you know, they take on a new sense of life when you feel like you personally own them in a way, like you carry them about as something so physical. Andres, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think the ability to see something. I know from personal experience, because when I did ResFest 2 years ago, the piece I chose was a very nondescript like bust quite near Nadine's painting, and I remember because part of my poem responded to it. Um, and I think that experience was very different from this, because I remember I had like zoomed over from work and Fern let me into the gallery, and like it was about to close, so you agreed with the security guard that he would just let me sit by myself for a bit. And I think that experience for that piece really gave me time to react to the other drawings. And I remember I wrote that piece from a perspective of like this silenced woman who was able to see two other really famous paintings of women, and one was the one Nadine responded to, and the other is that one of the lady with the champagne in the opera house. I can't speak French, so I'm not going to even attempt the name of the actual picture. But I think that versus the sketch I chose gave a really, I went with a sort of different approach because I felt compelled to write from the perspective of the art piece when I was in the gallery. Whereas this one, I think just by virtue of how Kat was sort of saying how we were interacting with it, I just felt it was easier to write it from the artist's point of view rather than from the person being sketched. And that might very well be because you know, having to go between looking at the drawing and then back to my Word doc and looking at the drawing and back to my Word doc, where I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna be the artist. Yeah, I think the experience, like the tangible experience, or even, you know, just the temporal experience of being in front of a piece of art will inform how you choose to do your commission.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I'm actually going to start off a series of thank yous now. It's been quite an hour, and I've gained so much from hearing all your different perspectives on these works, and it's just been everything that I hoped it would be, to be honest, and I can't wait to chat about it in more depth in a more private setting. So thank you all, Kat, Nadine, Andres, Dean, truly wonderful works, and thank you for helping me understand different views, interpretations of Courtauld pieces. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my wonderful team, Grace, Acacia, and Layla, especially Layla, who has not only come up with the programming for Open Courtauld Hour, she has worked out how to facilitate the series and also starred as a host on many episodes, women of many talents. I don't know where her energy comes from, but I'm very thankful to have her on my team. And thanks are also due to my wonderful boss, Alex. Thank you for letting us run wild with our ideas and allowing us to make stuff like this happen. And similarly, thanks to Debbie, our director, for letting us do these things. I know she has enjoyed this series very much and has been really supportive. It is indicative that aims to engage larger audiences in new ways as a whole is at the forefront of Courtauld strategic planning, and I appreciate that. And lastly, thanks to all of you who tuned in tonight. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So it's good night from me, it's good night from all the poets and Layla, and I hope to see you at an event in real life, but if we can't, we'll catch up with you online sometime again soon. Good night.